tell you, I'm very late all the time. But I am sick. I'm so sorry. And so I am going to start this right on the dot. And I apologize if any of you, I'm over here in the corner. I promise I won't breathe on you. I am Rachel McLaughlin, and I'm the horse racing analyst. Thank you, Melissa. She has my back. The horse racing analyst here. And I also was at Hoosier Park, too. So when I first started. So for those of you who don't know, I did a little bit of both standardbred and thoroughbred. But yeah, my specialty has ended up being thoroughbreds. But I'm very excited to again for, I'm not even sure how many years ago, where is Jim? Jim Brown was like, Rachel, you and Emily need to host the, yeah, that's the man that gave me this job. Thanks, I'm still doing it, buddy. You see that? Yeah, so thanks. And I wish I could come squeeze you too because I miss you, but I am sick, so I'm going to stay away. But we do have a great program. I'm very excited about all of the inductees today, this evening. I'm so sorry. And we'll try to get through this, and the pictures are beautiful as well. Can't wait to show you those. And I have a Vanna this evening. Miss Gabrielle Knox is going to, Tammy's taken pity on my soul, and she's 6'5", so she'll be unveiling the pictures this evening. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Eric Hallstrom, our VP and GM of racing, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
So I've avoided Rachel all day, and here I come up talking into the same microphone that she just walked away from, which is just kind of my luck. I'm going to give a little bit of history of this event, but first things first, it's a good tradition here that we have for this event that we start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. So you see the flag behind me, I'll start you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Feel free to be seated. I'll just give you a little bit of background. I think a lot of people in the room have been to one of these events before, but there's always a new group that hasn't. So just a little bit of history with how this started. The Horse Racing Hall of Fame began in 2014. There was an event held down at the Columbia Club downtown. The first two individuals who were inducted were, they're legendary here. Chairman Larry Borst, who was a longtime state senator in Indiana. He was a legendary veterinarian in the state, and he worked very hard to bring parimutuel horse racing to the state, and is somebody that we all really respected, and you know, he's a big part of what racing has been in Indiana. And the other was Michael Schaefer, who was the first commissioner, the chairman of the Indiana Horse Racing Commission. Think about that. That was 1990, early 90s, 1994, and those two kind of set the path that we're all following right now. The event rotates between the racetracks. Next year it'll be up at Hoosier Park. There's been 27 individuals inducted into the Hall of Fame at this point. Of course, we've got 3 of them going in tonight, 3 very, very appropriate to have them in this really esteemed group. You saw outside, if you came in that way, that's where the Hall of Fame, the pictures and all the plaques, and tell a little bit about each of our inductee. And coming in a couple of weeks, we'll get these pictures hung up, and this group will be with them forever. It's kind of interesting. You'll see the portraits are beautiful. Melinda Spearhuff of Sheridan is the one that actually does the work on these portraits. Tammy gets some pictures of each of the inductees and one that they choose, and Melinda just does a really great job. We've got really, really quality framing. They're very nice. The display is actually well done, and we're proud to have it out here at Horseshoe Indianapolis. The way the committee is made up, it's represented by several members. The racetrack, myself, Trent McIntosh, represent Horseshoe Indianapolis. Colin Skidmore and Gabe Pruitt represent Hoosier Park. Joe Davis is on our committee, the president of the HBPA. Chris Duke, president of the Quarter Horse Group. And, you know, that John DeLong, I think John nominated Gary today. You know, it's really kind of a very good system that goes around. We're thoroughbred and quarter horse here. They've got standardbreds up in Anderson, and between the six of us, we pretty much know everybody and feel honored to be a part of this process. So that's how the night will start. The next thing we'll do, we're gonna have Mickey Sache is our chaplain here, and he's gonna lead us in prayer to get the night started. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Please stand up and pray for you guys. Thank you, God, for this beautiful day. Thank you for these beautiful people I'm here tonight. Thank you, Father, for this celebration. Please, God, I'm blessing this celebration. Thank you for the dinner to share tonight. In the name of Jesus, I declare your glory, your grace, your peace, and your love in this moment and in this place. In the name of Jesus, amen. I bless you guys.
And now, to join on the mic after he also has avoided me all day. He stuck his head in my office today, did not say one word, and just walked away. Trent McIntosh, our VP and General Manager. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for Trent.
I tried to talk to Eric about just passing it off directly to me so we could cut the middleman out, but I think he forgot. Hey, I'm going to keep this really short and sweet. And one, I want to give a shout out to the food and beverage team for the food offering we've got tonight. Much appreciate y'all. Second, I want to thank everybody that came here tonight, that I know everybody in this industry cares and cares for and loves horse racing, and helping us celebrate tonight's inductees for the 2026 class of the Indiana Horse Racing Hall of Fame. And lastly, to the inductees, I want to say congratulations on not only a career, but in some cases a lifetime of accomplishments. And I was talking to Mr. Brian Elmore, who I know is going to be up here a little bit later, earlier today, and we were talking about, like, this is a really interesting class of people that, you know, one is here based on a lifetime of results directly in horse racing and horse breeding. We've got one who did this from an operational standpoint, that worked in our facilities and helped grow racing in his own way throughout the years. And then third, we've got an individual that really made sure that what was in the best interest of horse racing over the course was heard by those that could help make decisions to help make it better. So 3 different people helped grow an industry that's still growing today in 3 different verticals, and I thought that was pretty cool. So congratulations to you all, and I'm going to wrap that up and say thank you very much.
Our first inductee is Mr. Bob Cherry, and very excited to be here today to induct him as well. I used to work downtown when I worked at the Winter Circle, and I met Bob through Jim and everybody. So I've known you for a very long time. He's always been such a pleasure to work with and a pleasure to see, and I'm very excited that he's back with us at the commission. I'd like to welcome up to induct him. Oh, it's you. I thought it was maybe Brian getting skirted up here quick. Brian Elmore, former executive director of the HPPA, and our inductee last year, where I think my favorite line of all the dozens of years that I've done this is when Brian came up after Emily and I cried, and he called us 2 weeping blondes. Brian Elmore, ladies and gentlemen.
It is indeed an honor and a pleasure for me to get to introduce to you tonight and say a few words and read the resolution about Robert Bob Cherry. It takes a special person to fill a public servant role. Bob stepped up to serve the community. He entered this role with grace, integrity, and humility. The Hancock County resident recently retired after 26 years of service in our state legislature. He was a member of the House, and he was a champion for agriculture and the horse racing industry. He was born right here in Shelbyville, Indiana. He went to Purdue to school and got his degree in ag, and then returned to Hancock County just outside Greenfield, where he pursued his lifelong dream of farming. That's what Bob really wanted to do. He wanted to be a farmer. After graduating from Purdue, he came back to Greenfield Central High School and then started working for the Farm Bureau Credit, which allowed him to get into the legislature. That was his avenue in. Bob always says, I'm a workhorse, not a show horse. And I think that was evident of how he worked in the legislature. You see, Bob could work with both sides of the aisle. He was well respected, and people trusted him. If Bob gave you his word, he was good on that. And it was always really appreciated. While in office, Bob grew familiar with the importance of horse racing to the state of Indiana and its agricultural landscape. He worked intensely on occasions to preserve the heritage of the industry, as well as ensure the programs remained healthy for horse racing to thrive. He's our 6th legislator to enter our Hall of Fame. The first one was the Honorable Larry Borst, Senator Borst. Senator Luke Kinley, who at one time, when they were taking the revenues away from horse racing, stood in the door and blocked it. He said, no, you're not going to do that. Stood up for us. Another senator that was inducted is here with us tonight. Former Senator Bob Jackman is here tonight. And also Representative Dick Thompson, who in 1993, during the special session, he was the one ensured that horse racing shared in the revenues from the casino admission tax at the time. They had the riverboat admission tax. And Dick Thompson is the one that worked hard to get that done. The other representative that served in the House for many years was Terry Austin of Madison County, who was a great friend to horse racing. We've had 5 tremendous legislators that worked on behalf. And tonight we're going to induct the 6th legislator that has worked tirelessly for the Horse Racing Commission. Bob and his wife, Deb, have 5 children, 12 grandchildren, and 1 new great-grandchild. And although Bob is in retirement, he's not slowed down any. I'm going to tell a little story. Now, I don't know, I can't prove this is true, but Bob is now coaching with his son, Kevin Keegan, at Lapel basketball, the Lapel Bulldogs, okay? Now, I was told this story, and I can't verify it as being true, but I think I could see it happening, and that is this. Lapel had a rival game with Frankton. They were arch enemies. They didn't like each other. And it was getting late in the game, less than 3 minutes to go. And the score was going back and forth, back and forth. And they had a couple bad calls by the officials, of course. The crowd was all worked up. They'd called a timeout. So the team huddled up. Kevin gave them their instructions. On 3, go Bulldogs. You know, 1, 2, 3, go Bulldogs. They break. And Bob hesitated to talk to one of the players to tell him about a play to set up when he got out of the floor where he should be in his position and all. So Kevin and Keegan already got back to the bench and sat down, and the other boys that got back to the bench sat down, and here comes Bob. Now, we've all been in these high school games, and there's always one obnoxious parent that has to jump up and yell something so everybody there will know how ignorant they are, okay? And this was a parent of a boy on the team that was lucky to make the team, but thought he should have a full ride scholarship to the premier basketball college in the country, which we all know is Purdue, right? So after everybody got sat down, here comes Bob back to the bench. This guy jumps up and yells, "Cherry, you suck." Bob never looked up, didn't do anything, went down, sat on his seat, turned down, looked at his son, Kevin. "That guy up there is talking to you, Kevin." Now, I don't know if that's true, but I was told that. So he and his wife, Deb, are avid sports fans. They share that with their children, their grandchildren, and they make a great couple together because Bob is a great man. And behind every great man, of course, is a great woman. Luckiest day of Bob's life is when he met Deb. And I think he'd tell you that, or he better tell you that. There's 3 traits in Bob and Deb that I appreciate most. One is their faith in God. Second is the love of their children. And third is their willingness to serve in their community. And that's something they have always done. You could not have a better friend than Bob Cherry. It's my honor to read the resolution for Bob going into the Hall of Fame. Now, there's a lot of whereases, okay, in this resolution. The more whereases you have means you have accomplished more things, okay? So I've got about 9 whereases and then about 4 therefores. So this will just take a minute, but every one of these worth reading. Whereas Bob is a longtime member of the Indiana House of Representatives with more than 26 years of service, an unwavering supporter of the Indiana horse racing industry. Whereas Bob has led a life devoted to unselfishness, helping and mentoring others for the betterment of the state of Indiana and the advancement of agricultural initiatives, including horse racing. Whereas Bob authored and co-authored several significant bills while in office, with many associated to causes closest to his heart, Indiana's agriculture industry and Hoosier farm families, many of which were associated with the preservation of horse racing. Whereas Bob served as Assistant Majority Caucus Chair for a decade and served as former Vice Chair of Ways and Means and was a member of the Government Regulatory Reform Committee, Local Government Committee, Agricultural and Rural Development Committee, Rules and Legislative Procedures, Select Committee on Government Reduction, and was an appointee on the State Board of Tax Commissioners. Whereas Bob has worked on numerous bills outside of racing for the state of Indiana, including the biennial state budget, saving taxpayers millions of dollars, and oversaw record investments in K-12 education. Whereas Bob worked to increase his awareness of Indiana horse racing to preserve the heritage of the industry. Whereas Bob is actively involved in his local community of Hancock County, including receiving the 33rd degree Scottish Rite, Indiana Freemasons, County Planning Commission Council, Hancock County Council, and member of the Greenfield Board of Zoning Appeals. Whereas Bob was awarded the Harvest Award by the State Fair Commission at the Indiana State Fair and was named Master Farmer by Prairie Farmer Magazine and Purdue University, his alma mater. Whereas Bob was recently appointed to the Indiana Horse Racing Commission by Governor Mike Braun. Now, therefore, the Indiana Horse Racing Association Incorporated Board of Directors unanimously, 1, finds that Robert Bob Cherry has met the strict criteria for admission into the Hall of Fame in that he has made long-lasting and substantial contributions for the benefit and advancement of the sport of horse racing in Indiana. 2, nominates Robert Bob Cherry for admission into the Indiana Horse Racing Association Hall of Fame. 3, directs a copy of this resolution be sent to Robert Bob Cherry. And 4, further directs that a portrait bearing the likeness of Robert Bob Cherry be hung in an appropriate location at Horseshoe, Indianapolis. I looked up in Webster's dictionary the word legend. And legend is somebody that is famous or infamous and is well known in his community. I can think of no other Hoosier that has served his community and his state and is well known across the country and well respected, and I believe that entitles him to being referred to as a legend. Would you please join me in welcoming Robert Bob Cherry to the podium?
say a few words first. Please sit down. Thank you, Brian. Not everything he said was true. I will say this, I did help my sons coach basketball last year. I enjoyed it. The camaraderie with these young people. And I like to say we won 18 games with me. We probably could have won 25 without me. So I'm going to do it again this year. It's a good way to build memories with your offspring. And my daughter's here tonight. My sons would like to have been here, but one was traveling. We had a granddaughter playing soccer for Louisville at Durham at Duke last night, and they was on the way back, and traffic is pretty heavy coming back up north, this nice warm weather we have. And so he couldn't be there, and the other one had a conference call at first thing in the morning, and he had to do the same things with his youngest daughter, so they're busy. And I know my daughter's here. She has two sons, and one's that goes to Marion University and plays rugby, and the other one is a senior at Pendleton Heights, and right now he's valedictorian of his class, and I'm most proud of that. And Rachel, she's one of my constituents in my district when I served in the General Assembly, so I'm glad that she's doing well, and I like to make mention of, I got a lot of friends here, but my state senator and my state representative from Greenfield, Hancock County are both here. And please stand up, Mike Ryder and Ethan. And the reason why, we live between the two tracks, and there's a lot of horse people in our district. And it's very important part of and I have to applaud, there's not a greater group than the horsemen in this state. And I like to thank Caesars for what they're doing, and we're just making horse racing even better every day. And for all breeds, it's very important. And the horsemen have taught me a lot, and the people who represent the horsemen at the State House has taught me a lot as well. I appreciate this recognition. Thank you very much.
Why don't you want your family to come up and take a picture of you with this? That's what we normally do. Everybody comes up and gets around it and takes a picture. You guys want to do that? Right here? Come on down, family. Bob's family, does anybody want to come take a picture of him with his photo? His wife, his daughter, nobody? You don't have to, believe me. Next, and congratulations to Bob, what a wonderful guy. As I did say, I was in standardbred racing for a few years, and I definitely know the name Gary Wilcox. I don't think anyone in standardbred industry would not know that name. So, but to come up and talk more about him, Joe Pearson, former Assistant Commissioner of Agriculture for Gary Wilcox.
Thank you. What an opportunity and a privilege it is for me to introduce to you tonight Gary Wilcox. I want to say that Gary lives in Urbana, Indiana, and most of you know probably where that is, but it's about 40 miles southwest of Fort Wayne. And he and his wife Hilda have been married for over 63 years. She's been the key part of that family. I'll say that, right, Gary? It's correct. But also, I want to say that he has 3 children. Shane is not able to be with us tonight, but his wife is here to represent him and be with him. And also, he has 2 daughters that are here this evening, which is Melissa and Valerie, here at the table to join us. I want to say something we wonder about Gary and where Brooklet's name came from, but Gary will talk to you about his great-great-grandfather. And then one of the titles of one of the farm, Brooklet Farm, was one of the names that he had, and he used that name then for marketing for the horses that he has. He will also tell you that his passion for horses started with his grandfather, Ernest, years and years ago when he was a grandchild. And he would go with his grandfather to the racetracks and everywhere else and join and help in. And Gary decided he wanted to race some horses, and his first racetrack was the county road out in front of the house. And he would try to go around the square mile, and finally his dad, Marcellus, decided, I'm going to help Gary, and was a good contractor, built the horse track, helped you build some of the race facilities he has there, and that's where Gary started out. I want to say Gary has been an active member of the Indiana Standardbred Association. He's been with the USTA for over 6 decades, serving consistently in things that he could do for them. Gary built a breeding and training program that has produced Indiana-bred pacers and trotters of high merit. And I want to mention his homebred filly just recently posted a remarkable time of 1 minute and 52.3 seconds here just recently to show the quality of improvement. Gary, I'm not going to go through a lot of the racing horses and history you have. It's in your brochure that you can read the bio. My professional relationship with Gary, and I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about history. My relationship with Gary started in 1995, and we'll all remember that in the state of Indiana, we started pari-mutuel betting, pari-mutuel in 1989, and Hoosier Park came online in 1994, and it was 1995 when we started thoroughbred racing. And the question at that point in time, we did not have a standardbred industry that had high-quality horses at that time that could really be competitive. And the state was very concerned at that point in time, would out-of-state horses come in and take the purse money out of Indiana instead of really taking care of the horsemen in the state of Indiana. So the critical part was that the state put on at that point in time, how are we going to develop a breeding program and a racing schedule that truly will bring Indiana horses online? And I would have to say, when we look at the Indiana Sire Stake program and what that program has done over a 3-year decade, you have to understand where was the genesis of that program and how did it happen. And that's where Gary was one of the strong people at that point in time in the standardbred meetings of coming in and saying, here's what we need to do. I was the Assistant Commissioner of Agriculture, and so I was there not only with the legislature, and Bob Cherry was critical. Senator Borst and others were very critical when I look at the Hall of Fame out there, but they were demanding certain things. We also talk about Mike Schaefer and the hand that he had with the Racing Commission and what had to be done. I look at Bob Jackman here, who said one day, Joe, you're going to get in a car with me and go to Pennsylvania. We went to Pittsburgh. He said, we're doing pari-mutuel. I want to know whether we're going to have how we're going to make them profitable, what we need to do. And I said, I don't think he can. He called the governor and said, Joe, you're going with me, right, Bob? But anyhow, I'm just saying there were tremendous people at that point in time that were putting together what we had to do for the Sire Stake and the Sire Stake program. I would want to just briefly mention to you that Gary will talk to you, and in your bio you'll read about where Gary, Ernie Gaskin, and Nat Hill sat around the table, and Hilda's good cooking. I think that's what convinced them. But that night of putting that Sire Stake program together, or at least in concept of putting that program together, but I want to say that even though those 3 people met and talked, and I could always take what Gary said and walk over to the governor's office, walk over to the lieutenant governor's office, and I could say that with a bond, here's what it's about, here's how it's going to work, and how things are going to be in place. But there were other people at that point in time in those rooms, Henry Blackwell, Richard Link, Mike Thompson, Vic Lozier, Dave White, Harold Barnes, Brian Barnes, Jay Cross, Nancy Sabatini, Scott Snyder, and others that I remember in the room of all the times that Gary was there and we met with the Standardbred Board of Regulations in order to develop the program that's here today. And the state again said we've got to have good breeding and we've got to have the races to put that together. And on the Senate side, I would have to say what Eric had mentioned earlier about the late Senator Borst, about Larry's great leadership, Senator Jackman's leadership, Mike Schaefer's leadership, Joe Gorachek, Rick Moore, who's on the program and was the executive director or the manager of Hoosier Park at that point in time, working hand in glove with all of us in order to make standardbred racing what it is. And then in 1999, the Standardbred Board of Regulations then was moved into the Racing Commission. Comments about Gary. One of the things that I found so surprising in the decade that I worked with Gary, when he would come in and have ideas, his ideas were always on target, and there would be times I would tell Gary, this isn't in your best interest. And he'd say, let me tell you, I'm here for the industry. I'm here to make this right and the integrity of what the program can be today. And I would also have always felt that it's normally the people that you work with that know you best. And so tonight I want to mention Homer Hostetler. And I will tell you, Homer shared with us that Gary has been responsible for bringing some of the most respected individuals into the horse racing industry and mentoring them, such as Jay Cross, Jeff Colliper, and Ernie Raber. And we would even say, Homer, you were one of those because of the 2 and 3 decades that you and Gary worked together. Ellen Taylor, longtime executive director of the Harness Horse Uses Foundation, notes that she always brings Gary equipment and everything else that's broken. And Gary will always return it to her. And she said, I never get a bill from Gary when that comes back. And he's done that for years and years and years. His dedication, not only beyond horse racing, but helping the youth and everything else. Jessica Barnes back here, who is now the assistant executive director, joined the Standardbred Board of Regulations in 1997. She was a young person at IU, a student, and she was hired to come in to run the county fairs and put those programs together that help us on those beginning sire stake. And Hilda, I've got to say for you, if there's one person in this room that needs to be recognized, it's Hilda. And I think probably Sophia Hawthorne was probably the best example that I could use. Nathaniel Hawthorne in 1849 in Salem, Massachusetts, lost his job in the custom house. And he came home to his wife, Sophie, and he said, you know, I am so distraught today. And she said, what's wrong? And he said, I just lost my job. And she said, Nathaniel, this is the greatest thing that's happened. You now can write that book you've always wanted to write. And he said, honey, what are we going to live on? And she turned around and went to a little drawer and pulled out enough money to live on for a year. And he said, where did you get that money? And she said, you don't understand. Every time you gave me some money, I put that back. I kept the home fires burning. And that's what Hilda has done for Gary and all the time that he's been away. And he will tell you it's because she kept the home fires burning. And so, Gary, on your behalf, I'm going to tell her half the honor tonight is hers with you. And if there were words to describe Gary, I would say it would be gentleman, exceptional foresight and insight, impeccable integrity, my word is my bond, embracing and mentoring others, putting help above self. And I will share with you the resolution that says, the resolution of the Board of Directors of the Indiana Horse Racing Association Incorporated nominating Gary W. Wilcox for membership into the Indiana Horse Racing Association Hall of Fame. Whereas Gary is a longtime participant and owner, breeder, trainer, and driver in the sport of the standardbred racing of the state of Indiana. Whereas Gary has dedicated more than 70 years to racing, serving as a participant and positive force for the groundwork of the current program still in place today. Whereas Gary worked on a team to bring pari-mutuel horse racing to the state of Indiana and assembled initial plans for the Indiana Star Stake program, still utilized today, showing the longevity of his vision of the industry. Whereas Gary, a longtime farmer in Urbana, Indiana, built a training center at his Brooklet farm and began breeding and raising his own horses, standing 4 stallions over the course of 6 decades, producing numerous state championships. Whereas Gary achieved success outside the state of Indiana in racing with horses carrying his Brooklet farm name, including world championship and finalist for Horse of the Year Brooklet Pride, with a world record mark of 1 minute and 54.1 seconds taken at Sportsman Park in 1984. And whereas Gary provided hay and straw to fellow horsemen and women from his farm, delivering truckloads to the backstretch during the racing days while stable on the grounds at Hoosier Park, and whereas Gary became a mentor to many young racing participants who have gone on to succeed careers in standardbred racing, whereas Gary took on additional roles with horses, including learning the trade of being a blacksmith and learning to fix harness and race bike wheels and other equipment in his shop, and a skill that he still uses today in participants at Hoosier Park. Now, therefore, the Indiana Horse Racing Association Incorporated Board of Directors unanimously, one, find that Gary Wilcox has met the strict criteria for admission into the Hall of Fame and that he has made long-lasting and substantial contributions to the benefit and the advancement of the sport of horse racing in Indiana. Two, nominates Gary Wilcox for admission into the Indiana Horse Racing Association Hall of Fame. Three, directs a copy of this resolution to be sent to Gary W. Wilcox. And four, further directs that a portrait bearing Gary's likeness, Gary W. Wilcox, be hung at an appropriate location in the Horseshoe in Indianapolis. At this time, I want to introduce to you and welcome Gary Wilcox.
I'm not much of a speaker, but the guy that just gave a speech is probably has led me and kept me straight on what needed to be done and how it needed to be done. And Joe probably needs as much as anybody. I really admired him, and I can't give much of a speech, but I know that the preacher just told me Sunday, you gotta get that thing close to your mouth. It's been a long ride, but I don't know how many of you remember John Cisna. He was from Illinois. He passed away. And when I was in Washington Park racing, we would maybe take a noon and eat lunch together. And I told him someday we'll have a pari-mutuel in Indiana, and he laughed at me. He said, "You'll never have it in Indiana." And I decided that I was going to change that if I had any possibilities of doing it. And they had a stake program over there where they had eliminations and a final. And if you had a colt that was a nice colt, a little something happened to him early, you never had a shot at getting in the final. And that's why the legs were laid out. So we had legs where everybody had a fair chance of getting to the final. And the other thing I think that really built our program was the Breeders' Award. One of the big things that sold me on that was when we first started, Donnie Irvine had I can't remember the name of the trotter. It was an invitational trotter, a good trotter, win everything. And every year they'd have an article in the magazine about this horse, and Donnie, well, we only give 4,000 for him, you know. And here's a breeder that got 4,000, and they won 2 or 3 or 400,000 with the horse. The breeder never got another dime. And unless you put money in that breeder's pocket, he's not going to go out and buy brood mares. So the Breeders' Award, that was a battle. I fought tooth and nail with Nat on that. I don't know if Nat's here, but we went round and round. And that, I think, and the Amish has helped develop it because they seen the Breeders' Award was the important thing, because that colt could bring $1 and be a good horse, and the breeder got something out of it. And I think that was one of the main things for our breed to go as far as it has, as fast as it has. So that's just all I got to say.
Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special, another very special gentleman. I was really blessed to work with as well, and I just gotta tell you, every time I walk in a room that Rick Moore's in, especially if I have to work, it just makes me so happy. He just makes me so happy. Like, I think a lot of people can agree, there's never a time when you see Rick's face and it just makes you joyful. He's a wonderful human being. He's always got a hug and a kiss for me, except for tonight, sadly. I stayed away. But he is a wonderful leader. I think everyone would agree. And to come up here and talk about him is another wonderful leader of mine, Eric Holstrom, the Vice President and General Manager of Racing here at Horseshoe Indy.
Well, thank you. Very honored to be able to do this. Rick and I go back quite a long way. He got me my first job here in Indiana. I think I can speak for Brian too. Rick took a chance on both of us, and I hope we've made you proud, Rick. That we did our best. Rick, as you sit and talk and you get to learn more. I mean, I've known Rick for 30 years now. I was in my mid-20s when Rick gave me a shot at coming to work here and running the OTB in Fort Wayne. I'll remember I interviewed. I'm not even sure why we had the chance to sit with Rick, and Danny Parkerson was the guy at Churchill Downs at the time who was, I don't know what his title was, but he was Rick's boss down in Louisville. And during the interview, it seemed to be going good, and these were easy guys to talk to, and we all liked horse racing, and we were telling each other about who we were going to bet on in the 9th race at Churchill that night and stuff like that. And at the end, Danny said, you're a little young to do this job, but I think I got the right guy for you to work with. And he was talking about Rick. And he said, I just want you to do a couple things. One is you act like him, and if he tells you to do something, you do it, because he's a man of integrity. And Danny was absolutely right on. I got to learn a lot from Rick right off the bat in my career, which it was interesting to hear Joe talk about all the people that came together to get racing going in the state. Mr. Jackman, all just cool names. Your speech was great, by the way. I can tell you've been up here before. But from my end, I was working in Fort Wayne, and Rick was our leader at Hoosier Park, and there was a lot going on at that time. I mean, Rick was opening up racing at the racetrack, and there was 3 OTBs opening up. There was one. The first one was up in Merrillville. That place was just booming. I went over. Rick sent me over there, helped open that up, and then we went over to Fort Wayne and got that facility open. And this was a different time. These OTBs were busy, and then we got to Brian was hired. Rick brought in Brian to run the Indianapolis OTB, and that place was just bonkers. It was a way different time than you see right now. There was no slot machines, and there was no cards, and it was just a way different thing. Rick had so much stuff going on, I didn't want to bother him. So we kind of got in the same spot. I know Brian's thinking the same thing. We just kind of figured it out, and if we had a real problem, then we called Rick. And because there was too many things, and he was just bombarded. But that's one of the first times I learned how in this business, there is no time of day. and if in Rick's case, he was driving home at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and that's when he'd call. And he'd ask me, how the day went, and I didn't have any stories that were nearly as important as what he had going on, but he never never missed a chance to make sure that I was getting what I needed, and I appreciated it a lot. And when Danny Parkerson said, act like Rick, that's what I've tried to do. Try to be there for people who, I liked working with, and, Rick definitely shaped my life. But when I got to hear a little bit of how he actually got in the business, I mean, he's the kind of a degenerate. That's how he got into it. And it was awesome to me. I was like, hey, that's me too, Rick. And his first job was as a ticket checker at Lebanon Raceway. is that Miami Valley now? Lebanon? Okay. I said, what is a ticket checker? And, well, he was too young to actually be on the payroll, so they were paying him on the side. And I guess it was for admission tickets. Yeah, he couldn't actually be a mutual teller, but at that age, he was already headed down the wrong path, I could see. I mean, I can imagine, Dan and Trent over here, me telling them, I've got this 14-year-old that I'm paying on the side here to do some work for us. After that, he became a teller at Latonia. Was it the Trots back then? The Latonia? Okay. Then, if that wasn't, you can see where his age was. Then he went to UK. Then he went to Kentucky and graduated from the University of Kentucky. Actually went into training thoroughbreds. And how many winners do you have, Rick? A handful? Yeah. He told me he didn't think he was going to be D. Wayne Lucas, so he thought he better try something else. And it turned out it worked the right way. He quickly worked his way up. He spent some time in Remington Park in Oklahoma City, helped get that racetrack open. And he was in the mutuals department side of things, the money room, where that's a really important place to learn a lot about the back end of racetracks. It's where I learned whatever I knew. In 1991, he became the mutual manager at Churchill Downs. It's a big job. I got a couple big races there that are quite important on the national scene, and Rick was in charge of, 1,000 tellers or whatever it is on these big weekends. But I think the thing that was kind of neat and just shows you how fate takes you some places and it works out the right way. He got a call from Danny and was asked to be a part of the team that opened up Hoosier Park in 1994. And Rick loved Indiana. They seemed to be working out very well, and it was pretty quickly he became the general manager. So, from that point, you can look through all the stuff, and we're all getting to know Indiana history better. Some of us have been here and left and come back. Some of us have been here the whole time. There's been a lot of things that have happened in this state in 30 years with our industry, and it's never thrived more than it is right now. But those opening years were really kind of incredible. Rick was there for the start of the Dan Patch, 1994, 1995 with the Indiana Derby on the thoroughbred side. So you think about that, where those two races are now. Those are major races on the national scene, both up at Hoosier and at our facility here. Rick was right there, right in the middle of it. I mentioned he opened up the 3 OTBs while on his spare time. Quarter horse racing came into the state, 1997. Rick was instrumental in getting that up and going. The move to the one breed, one track idea, finally settling on standard bred racing in Anderson and thoroughbreds and quarter horses in Shelbyville. Rick was right there. I think back just more recently, 5 years ago, and I know from my own shoes, leading the industry back through COVID. It was a rough time, and Rick and I spent a lot of times on the phone, and spent a lot of time on the phone with Brian. We talked a lot about how this thing was going to come back, and I think if you look at racing nationally, that's where we turned. We figured out what we needed to do to come out of that, but behind the scenes, dealing with the staff at each of the racetracks and making sure that our employees were being treated well, and our company was very good to all of us, including us. Rick was instrumental in getting us through a lot of that. He sat on numerous boards. The list was about that long, so I'm not going to go through them all, but he's very well thought of, and his presence is appreciated by way more than just groups like us. Rick has been very important to a lot of people. He was the Indiana State Fair Man of the Year. Rick, why don't you tell me this? I would have sent you a card. I didn't even know. 2018, he was inducted into the QHRAI Hall of Fame. It's awesome. The list kind of goes on here, but as we're sitting in the room, Rick's been there through it all, and you know, I think he's touched so many of us in this room in some way, and helped develop me and whatever I've become. You know, Rick was a big part of that. So it's really great to have his family. I've gotten to know, you know, Kevin and Jeff, his other brother Jeff, and you know, Linda. I appreciate, you know, your friendship too. So I think at this time I'm going to go through the resolution, you know, to the board of directors of the Indiana Horse Racing Association Hall of Fame. Whereas Rick is a longtime executive and has been involved in parimutuel horse racing in the state of Indiana since its inception in 1994 at Hoosier Park. Whereas Rick served as general manager, president, and eventually vice president of racing at Hoosier Park for more than 3 decades. Whereas Rick was instrumental in bringing and developing the state's 2 largest races to Indiana with the development of the Dan Patch for standardbred racing in 1994 and the formation of the Indiana Derby in 1995 for thoroughbred racing. Whereas Rick oversaw and implemented parimutuel quarter horse racing in the state of Indiana in 1997 and was later recognized for his work as an inductee into the 2018 Quarter Horse Racing Association Hall of Fame. Whereas Rick led the team for the opening of 3 off-track betting facilities in the state, as well as assisting with the addition of casino gaming at Hoosier Park in 2007, the move to implement one breed, one track in 2013, and the incorporation of table games to casino operations at horse racing facilities in 2018. Whereas Rick led his team through unprecedented times during COVID-19, and under his precautionary guidelines, Hoosier Park was one of the first tracks in North America to resume operations. Whereas Rick continues to keep community at the forefront, serving on various boards over the past 3 decades, including past president of the board of directors for the Anderson Fine Arts Center and court-appointed state advocates, in addition to past chairman of the board for the Chamber of Commerce. And whereas Rick continues to serve in racing organizations as board member of the Standardbred Transition Alliance, with past positions as member of the Indiana Horse Racing and Breeders Coalition, and past president of the Indiana Horse Racing Association, and was honored for his dedication to racing as the 2007 Indiana State Fair Man of the Year. That's the one that's got me, Rick. Now, therefore, the Indiana Horse Racing Association Incorporated Board of Directors unanimously finds that Richard B. Rick Moore has met the strict criteria for admission into the Hall of Fame, and that he has made long-lasting and substantial contributions for the benefit and advancement of the sport of horse racing in Indiana. It nominates Richard B. Rick Moore for admission into the Indiana Horse Racing Association Hall of Fame. It directs a copy of this resolution to be sent to Richard B. Rick Moore, and further directs that a portrait bearing the likeness of Richard B. Rick Moore be hung in an appropriate location at Horseshoe, Indianapolis. And with that, I would like everybody to acknowledge our friend here and ask Rick to come up and say a few words and congratulate him for his award.
Wow. Where do I even begin? You know, I'm truly humbled to stand here tonight among so many friends and colleagues who have taken the time to celebrate the moment with me. To say that I feel lucky to be inducted into the Hall of Fame is an understatement. It's truly beyond anything I ever imagined. A sincere thank you to the IHRA board members for this incredible honor. As I prepared for tonight, my thoughts went immediately to my mom and dad. I wish more than anything that they could be here to share this moment, but I have no doubt they're watching with pride. I'm also blessed to have family here with me tonight. my brother Kevin and his wife Linda, and my niece Melanie. Unfortunately, my brother Jeff could not be here today due to his recuperating back surgery. Kevin, Linda, and Melanie, you love and support me, the world to me. I think the words to you guys. To many friends here this evening, I wish I could thank each of you individually. Please know that my gratitude runs deep. Your kindness, encouragement, and belief in me over the years have been invaluable, and I will never forget it. You know, I still remember Thursday, September 1st, 1994, the first ever pari-mutuel horse racing event in Anderson, Indiana at Hoosier Park. At the time, I was working in Louisville for Churchill Downs, one of Hoosier Park's majority owners. Many of us volunteered to come up and help with the grand opening. My friend Greg Bush and I made the trip, enjoyed an incredible night, and as we got in the car to head home, I turned to him and said, I hope this is the last night we ever have to spend in Anderson, Indiana. And I have to, it was the little language a little more embellished about that. We laughed. I opened a beer, and we hit the road, not realizing that 10 days later, I'd be back. This time as the general manager of Hoosier Park. What was supposed to be a short-term assignment quickly became a lifelong journey, one I'm deeply grateful for. Very, 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 very grateful. Looking back on these past 30 years, I'm filled with pride for what Indiana's horse racing community has accomplished across all breeds, standardbred, thoroughbred, and quarter horse, the growth, success, and history we've built together. Together are nothing short of remarkable. Congratulations to all of you who have played a part in making this state such a special home for horse racing. It's amazing to think how events like the Dan Patch Stakes and the Indiana Derby, both born right there in Anderson, have grown into nationally recognized races celebrated across North America and beyond for Harrah's Hoosier Park and Horseshoe Indianapolis. So once again, thank you for this honor, for your friendship, and for the joy you've brought into my life. Tonight will forever be etched in my memory, and I'll carry it with me always. Thank you all. Thank you all so, so very much.
That picture in that bag is a really good picture too. I saw it in Tammy's office. It's of Brian, Rick, and Eric. That's pretty good. Thank you to everyone who attended and joined us for the Hall of Fame banquet. I have got to say, doing this for over 10 years, it really makes you realize how wonderful the men and leaders, men and women leaders in this state have been and how lucky we are. So congratulations to Gary and to Bob and to Rick for being inducted this evening. And may you all have a very safe trip home. Good evening.